What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today on the channel we're going to be checking out something that you guys have been asking me for, well some of you anyway. About a week or two, I forget, a little while ago I did a video of my top 5 list of affordable Rolex Explorer alternative watches. In the comments of that video, a lot of you guys said, what about the Monta Triumph? Well, I was aware of that watch. I've seen a couple of other YouTubers' reviews on it. I have a pretty positive expectation or impression coming into it, but never saw it myself, so wasn't exactly comfortable putting that on my list. Anyway, I reached out to Monta and said, I've had some people asking me about this watch. I'd really like to review it. Is there any way you can accommodate me? And they sent me over last week a demo review sample watch on loan for me to check out. So that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to review that watch. Alright guys, here we have it, the Monta Triumph. First thing I want to show you before we dive into the watch is this really excellent, very well executed display case. I know a lot of you guys don't care about the box that it comes in, but this is really well done. So we're going to take a moment and take a look at that up close. This presentation case or box is clearly a high gloss, as you can see by the shadowing and the reflections of my light. It's a really nicely executed wooden box though. It is a hinged box, and folding it open reveals a little treasure trove of things inside. On the back side, it's got a very nice sort of cushioned felt lining with the Monta logo. It's big, I can't get it all in frame, I apologize, but I think you get the gist of it. We have very nice metal hinges on the rear side. On the inner portion of the box, there is this insert here. I'm not sure if it is leather. It certainly feels like it. Really well done. A little bit of foam packing material here just to keep the watch safe. We'll get that out of the way. In your left compartment, you just have the pillow that the watch comes on, obviously. Down in this lower compartment that came with this example, and I don't know if they all come with this or if this was just because it's a demo sample watch for reviews. We have a couple of strap options here. A very nice, just a pretty standard style NATO strap, but high quality. It's very soft. I actually really like this strap, the feel of it quite a bit. I would compare it favorably to a lot of the high quality straps that I've reviewed in the past. There's also, and I haven't even taken this out of the package because I'm not much of a rubber or a silicone strap guy, but there is a rubber silicone strap. We'll sort of look at that for the first time together. Apparently it comes with extra spring bars as well. It's actually a very nice rubber or silicone. Dropped that spring bar. We'll have to pick that up in a second. It is very supple, very flexible. Overall, honestly, this is my first impression of the strap. I'm impressed, but again, I don't really wear rubber or silicone straps, so this would be nice for some of you, but not entirely useful for myself. Finally, in this larger cubby, you get, first of all, a little carrying pouch. This is very reminiscent of the pouches that you get when you send in a Rolex for servicing. It looks just like this, but it's got the coronet and the Rolex branding, little snap enclosure, and then on the inside, I'm gonna guess, yeah, there's a little card that helps, to secure your watch down. I also stored the extra links for the bracelet in this little pouch, for the time being anyway. Also inside, I don't know if, again, they all come with this or because it's a review sample, they provided it. They give you a screwdriver and a spring bar tool because the links on the bracelet are screwed in links. They're very nice. I'll show you those, but they were included in this demo. I don't know, again, if they all come with this. I hope they do because it is super helpful to have that little toolkit provided. You also have your little warranty card here. As you can see, demo, reference number. It's also in a little plastic sleeve. I won't bother taking that out for you guys. Inside there, here's Justin's business card. He's the gentleman that sent me the watch on loan. And finally, down in the bottom of this little cubby, a little difficult to get out, just a little small pamphlet, manual type documentation or literature. I don't think, the insert doesn't come out. It's in there securely, so there's nothing underneath there. But that's the box, the presentation case. Very well done. Like I said, I know a lot of you guys don't care about this, but I thought it was worth taking a minute or two to go over everything that you get with the watch because it's an excellent case. They really hit it out of the park in that regard. Now we're going to go ahead and check out what everyone is certainly here to see, the watch itself. Here we have the Monta Triumph. Very, very impressed with this little watch. First things we'll go over the MSRP on this watch, $1,375. I know a lot of people are going to cringe at that and feel like it's too expensive. I think you're getting a lot of value here. This is a really high quality watch. I don't think that it is over the moon expensive. It's not outrageous, and once we go over all of the features, I think you will, well, hopefully agree with me. Dimensions, the size, the scale of the case. 38.5 millimeters in diameter from edge to edge, not including the crown, of course. There are no crown guards on this case, which is a nice aesthetic touch, I think. We have a lug width of 20 millimeters, which is perfectly standard. The thickness on this watch is excellent. On my calipers, it comes in at only about 9.5 millimeters in thickness. Very, very nice. I think that's well done. And then the lug width from one extremity of the case to the other, or the watch's wingspan, as I historically have called it, I get a measurement on my calipers of 47 millimeters. Overall, the size and scale of this watch is fantastic. It's just right for the type of watch that it is. Since it doesn't have complications like a chronographer and big pushers or a tachometer bezel or anything like that, since it's not a dive watch with an elapsed time bezel, I prefer watches like this. This is kind of a field watch, sort of an everyday wear watch, a double duty, if you will, style watch. I prefer it a little smaller in scale, and I think that this one comes in just about perfect in its size and in its proportions and its dimensions. They really hit it out of the park as far as the overall, again, size and scale on this watch. The other specifications here, we have 316L stainless steel case. We have a sapphire crystal with a 7-layer process of anti-reflective coating on the underside of the crystal. I don't know what that means technically. It sounds impressive, but it actually looks very impressive as well. In person, you can definitely tell that it is AR coated. You do pick up some reflections there. You're probably seeing a little bit, particularly if I shine it over towards my lights or my camera directly, but it is very legible in all lighting conditions. So looks great there. We have 150 meters of water resistance. That's kind of atypical for a watch like this. Usually the standard is 100 or less on things like a similar style watch, like a field watch, like my Hamilton Khaki. I think that's only got 50 meters of water resistance. So that this has 150 meters is pretty impressive. We do have a screw down crown here, and the crown is of course signed with the little Monta logo, as you can see there, if I can get it out of the reflection of the lights. The shape of the crown is sort of, I don't know, cupcake shaped. Is that a crown style? That's sort of what it looks like to me. It's got good knurling or traction. Manipulation of the crown is quite simple. I'll show you that in more detail in a moment. The dial is a matte black dial. We have a combination of applied markers and printed markers and numerals on the dial. We get a generous application of BGW9 Superluminova, I believe is what they're using there. And I will show you an example of the lume here in a little while as well. The handset is a rhodium plated sword style handset. It looks great. That rhodium plating, not a technology or a material that I'm super familiar with, but when we zoom in close on the dial, you'll see that it is very lustrous. Next, of course, it is on a stainless steel bracelet with just a friction lock clasp with a fold over safety latch. We'll take a look at that. We do get some micro adjusts. Overall, pretty good clasp. I have one little complaint about the clasp, and I'll share that with you here shortly. The last thing to cover as far as specifications, the movement. It's a Sellita SW300. Sellita SW300 is pretty much a competitor with the ETA 2892. Not to get confused with the more affordable 2824 that we're all probably very familiar with. 2892, and by extension this Sellita SW300, is a higher end movement. It is a 26 joule movement with a 42-hour power reserve. It hand winds and hacks, of course, and as you can see at the 6 o'clock position on the dial, we do have a date complication. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and the accuracy on this watch is outstanding. On Monta's website, they call it a chronometer-tuned watch. It's certainly not a chronometer certified, COSC certified movement. If it was, it would probably be significantly more expensive. But a chronometer tuned watch, I suppose what they want to say is that it's got an accuracy range of between roughly +5 to -5 seconds per day. In my experience, it most certainly does have that type of accuracy. I've worn it a little bit in my testing, and on the wrist I get around +3 or thereabouts per day. I threw it on the time grapher. I'll bring up some video of that for you guys to see it running on the time grapher. In the dial-up position, which is the only one I took video of, it kind of hovers around +2 to +3. Very good, and by very good I mean basically no beat error or any problems with the movement. We get a pretty strong amplitude. I think I'm remembering because I shot the video a little earlier. Amplitude in the 170 to 180 range. Overall, it's a really good movement. It's a very accurate movement. I'm impressed with it. It's the first watch that I've seen with the Sellita SW300. I've seen some 200s and of course lots of ETA movements, and very impressed with the implementation of the movement in this watch. Let's zoom in a little bit closer and take a look at some of the details. First thing, we'll look at the case here. Let's look at the case finishing. Mostly a brushed finish, but you can see that there's some polished edges, in particular around this little chamfer or beveled edge on the lugs, and not on the face of the bezel, but on the edge of the bezel. There's a nice polished edge there. I mean, mirror polished actually. You can see just in that little sliver of polishing, lots of reflection. Overall, the finishing on it is excellent. The shape, the style of the case, it's kind of flat. You don't have very strong, aggressive, downward sloping lugs or anything like that, but it lays flat on the wrist because there's not much of a bubble or a bulge in the case back. It's a very flat case back. So, I mean, overall, the implementation of the case is excellent. The overall profile of the lugs, they're not, very large and aggressive, but nor do they taper down. It doesn't feel like they're too big or too small. It's kind of Goldilocks in that it's just right, in my opinion. On the right-hand side of the case, more of the same, along with that signed with the Monta logo crown at the 3 o'clock position. The crown itself, we'll talk about, very easy to manipulate. Unscrewing the crown down is, as you would expect. Couple backwards turns, puts it out into the first position. This is, of course, a hand winding movement. The feel of the winding on the Sellita SW300, it's a little different than anything else I've really had before. It's nothing like an ETA, it's not like a Rolex, it's not like a Seiko. It's almost like you don't feel anything, just a very slight click as you turn it. Pulling the crown out to the first position, of course, sets the date for a quick set date function, and pulling the crown out to the second position hacks the movement. As you can see, the second hand stops running. You can, of course, adjust the time. We'll set it back just a few seconds to give us that stereotypical 9 minutes after 10 presentation on a dial. Pushing it back in, just like screwing it down, works very good. A little downward pressure and a slight twist brings it back in. It sits into the case recessed ever so slightly once it's screwed down. There are, of course, no crown guards to protect it on the side of the case. I think that's a good thing here. I think the presentation of a smooth-sided case is better than something with protruding crown guards, but, that's just my personal taste. We do have an exhibition display case back here. You can see that there is some perlage or Côte de Genève decoration on the rotor along with the Monta logo in gold. Other than that, though, not a whole lot of decoration. We'll see if we can get that rotor to spin out of the way and find the balance wheel. There's the balance wheel of the SW300 movement spinning around. Yeah, not much decoration beyond the rotor, but it looks better than a strictly utilitarian style movement that you might see in obviously more affordable, but Seiko watches with the 7S, 4R, or 6R series of movements. Overall, it's a good presentation, and the fact that it is such a flat case back, again, makes the watch wear very low and very close to the wrist. That crystal, as I had mentioned, is a flat sapphire crystal with 7 layers of AR coating on the underside, so no AR coating on the top side to get scratched up, scuffed up, or marked up. It will always look nice and clean and fresh for you. On the underside, though, there is an application of AR coating, and it works very well. I mean, we're seeing a little bit of reflection there. That's standard, though. Overall, there's not a whole lot to say about the crystal. It's really well done. Next, we will discuss the dial and the handset. I'll zoom in just a little bit closer here because I can't really get a good look at these markers like I would like to. So on the dial here, you can probably see at the 12, 3, and 9 we have applied markers, but then at the rest of the positions, including the hour track, we just have printed indices, indexes, or markers. The markers at the 12, 3, and 9 are very nice applied markers with high polished stainless steel edges, and then a very ample application of that BGW9 Superluminova lume. Speaking of the lume, I'll bring in a lume shot now, I suppose, to give you guys a look at how the lume functions in low light situations. I think it's pretty well executed. It's maybe not as bright as the blinding level of lume that you'll see on certain Seiko models, but certainly better than a lot of options that I have reviewed in the past. The lume on the handset's also executed just as well as on the markers. Back to the dial itself, again, as I had mentioned, those applied markers, and then printing on the rest of the dial, the Monta logo, and then the Triumph automatic at the 6 o'clock side. The window surrounding the date complication down at the 6 o'clock bottom edge of the dial, of course, removes the indice or the numeral for the 6-hour marker. In place of it, we have a very nice stainless steel, polished stainless steel outlined date window, and then a black date disc with white numerals. It's very legible. I like the implementation of a date complication at the 6 o'clock position. I think it does more for the symmetry of the watch. The handset is sort of a broadsword style handset, and they say that it is rhodium plated. I, again, don't know a lot about that technology, but it looks great. And as you can see, if we look at the minute hand, I'm just going to kind of dance it around the light. It's actually faceted. You see that little facet there? So there's a little bit of a three-dimensional effect when you catch it in the light. The second hand is sort of a spear tip, and it is filled with a little bit of lume on that second hand. Overall, it's, again, a really nice implementation. I like the style of handset that they went here on this watch. Outside of the minute markers or indices, you can see that there's a semi-abbreviated or a half-style train track, minute track, or second track, and to the left and the right of each of those hour markers, you can see that it's sort of terminated or abbreviated. I like that design element. It makes it feel, I don't know, a little less institutional with just a hash mark, hash mark, hash mark, hash mark, hash mark. I don't know, that's just me. But regardless, I like that little design element that they chose to do here. It just makes it a little more visually interesting in my mind. The last thing to cover here is going to be the bracelet, and as I already pointed out, the end links are solid end links. They're very nicely done. The bracelet itself is sort of like a 3-link oyster style, except you can see that we have fully articulating center links. I love when watches do this. It makes the watch wear and drape over the wrist much more fluidly. Yeah, I really enjoy the implementation of this style of link. I have this kind of similar thing going on my Hamilton Field Watch. I love when they do that, as where a traditional oyster bracelet would be fixed, and it would only articulate on the single hinge point. The clasp itself, it's not bad. I'll be honest, it's not outstanding. It's good though. You have a fold-over safety latch, which does have the Monta logo there, signed, engraved. Open that up, and then you just have a friction lock as opposed to push-button deployment or any sort of hinge system. I wish it was a little more sophisticated than friction lock, but it works. The friction lock is interesting in that it's got a little detent here on this side, and then it locks into this cavity on the other side of the swing arm. The swing arm itself, nicely machined, highly polished. I have one small complaint about the swing arm, though, and I'll explain that in a moment. Finally, we do have 4 micro adjust holes there, so you have plenty of adjustment. You should be able to find a size, a fit that will work for just about any wrist. And of course, the links are screw-in links. As I pointed out, I was supplied with a screwdriver. I do hope that they supply everybody with the screwdriver, because it was very simple to resize this bracelet. So what is my basically one complaint about this watch? It's something little, but it's this swing arm, and it's either too long or not curved enough. So what happens is when it's on the wrist, it doesn't really hug the wrist, it kind of sticks out. I'm going to see if I can sort of demonstrate it here, because I won't be able to demonstrate it on the wrist. It kind of sticks out, I'm exaggerating, like this though, where that one link down here kind of comes out and then it curves back over on my wrist. Maybe I have weird wrists that, they don't conform to the shape of everyone else's. I can't say that I've had this complaint with any other watch that I've tried on though. In my opinion, this swing arm could just curve up more in this direction to hug the wrist a little bit better. But honestly, that's about my only complaint with this watch in its entirety. I think that otherwise it's, basically just about perfect, honestly. I really like the design, I like the style, I think the quality is there. Just that little tiny bit of an annoyance when it's on my wrist. And, there's other options for straps and whatnot, so I suppose that's not a deal breaker for me. Figured I'd bring out an example of what I was talking about on that swing arm. You see how much more curved upwards on my Hamilton the swing arm is? It just hugs my wrist better. That's the bottom line. I think it might be a little bit shorter as well, but if it's the same size, it just feels a little bit more comfortable. And speaking of the Hamilton, because people probably are going to ask, like, how does this compare to $400 to $500 Hamilton khaki field? Well, it's better, without a doubt. Higher quality, better materials. Overall, I would say that it's dressed up a little bit more. It's probably better for more occasions. The Hamilton watch is kind of, like I had mentioned, that institutional feel. It's very, just simple and straightforward. The Monta's dial is a little bit more dressy. The case is finished a little bit nicer. Overall, it is just a better watch. I frequently forget to do wrist shots, and people complain about it incessantly in my comments. I don't really see a lot of value in doing wrist shots. Like, I have a 6 3/4 inch wrist. It's shaped a certain way. Do you have the same size and proportioned wrist as me? And then this perspective on the camera, it's sort of deceiving on how it's going to look, but whatever. I'll do it so that I don't have to deal with the people that complain. Hopefully, if I'm lucky, people will complain that I did a wrist shot and say I shouldn't have, just to get under my skin. But there it is on my wrist. It fits great. The size, again, is an absolute home run at 38.5 millimeters, just like my Hamilton, basically. It fits me perfectly. The clasp, again, I don't think I can get the angle, but you see how the swing arm is pushing this one link kind of awkwardly? It doesn't want to actually come up and hug the wrist like it does on this side. On this side, it's just wrapping around the wrist. But on the 12 o'clock side, that swing arm is just interfering with the first link on the bracelet. Very, very tiny little nitpicky thing, but I noticed it the moment I put it on that it just felt a little bit awkward, and this is an awkward angle to try to show it to you or demonstrate it, so you're probably not getting the full effect. But regardless, other than that little tiny complaint, and I could wear it like this, it'd be fine. I just, again, noticed that it was a little different. It's great. It's fantastic. It's awesome. Well, that's going to be the presentation for the Monta Triumph. I'm going to hop back over to the studio view, close this out with a few final thoughts, and wrap this video up. So stick with me for a couple of more minutes, guys. Alright guys, that is my review, my presentation of the Monta Triumph. Definitely a really high quality watch. There's not really too many things that I dislike about it. I had that little complaint about the bracelet, in particular the swing arm on the clasp, just being a little awkward in its size and shape and not fitting my personal wrist perfectly the way that I would like. That may or may not be an issue for anyone else though. Maybe I have weird mutant wrists and it just doesn't fit me quite the way that I would like it to. Other than that, the build quality of this watch is really very good at a retail price point of $13.75 on their website, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a pretty fair price. You're getting a lot of quality, and for the price, I think there's a lot of value there. In particular, we have that nice AR coated sapphire crystal. They call it a 7-layer coating. Technically speaking, I don't know what that means, but it sounds impressive, and in looking at the crystal, it looks impressive. Of course, we have that Sellita SW300 chronometer tuned movement, not truly a COSC certified movement, I guess, but as you saw in the video, It is keeping excellent time for me over the last week that I've had it. I'm impressed with that movement, and it's not a super cheap, super affordable movement, so that's where some of the price comes from. At $13.75, yeah, I don't think it's crazy out of this world expensive. I think it's a pretty decent value. Well, guys, that's going to do it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back later this week. My review schedules are usually Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then on Sundays I try to do not a full review, just maybe some sort of I don't know, lighter side of watches, kind of topical stuff. I try to do that on Sundays. So Tuesday, Thursday, Sundays. I'll be back on Thursday with another review. I've got something really cool on loan to show you guys. So yeah, thanks again for checking this video out. As always, if you would like to support the channel, there's a few ways you can do that. It's always listed in the descriptions of my videos. Number 1, my social media. Please follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, whichever you prefer. Number 2, I have a link to my Patreon account. I got a few of you guys over there supporting me on Patreon. I want to thank you very much, but I could always use more support over there. If you're interested, pop over there and check out my Patreon page. Finally, I always have a link to my Amazon affiliate. Well, I should say I always have a link to Amazon through my affiliate link. If you like anything that I've reviewed, you can click on that link and purchase it, or anything else for that matter, and I get a small commission. Those little commissions, they're small, but they do add up and they do help support the channel. I appreciate everyone that has been clicking on those links. Thank you guys very much. So until Thursday, I will sign off and say have a good one. Bye now.